It's Money Monday on Power 98.7, personal finance, ways that you can make your money grow, and one way is to get involved in property. We're speaking to property investor Witness Ndaka now, and the question is, should you buy to let? A buy-to-let property can be one of the more attractive investment opportunities out there. Even though rentals are increasing steadily again with the prospect of further growth over the next few months, landlords do face sky-high municipal and maintenance costs. And then there's the issue of dealing with tenants with fluctuating incomes who either don't pay or pay late. Your rental property could therefore become a liability rather than an asset. So when buying a property with a view to rent it out, there are many market factors that one needs to keep in mind. So let's delve into those right now. You can call in on 0861 987 000 if you have in the past purchased to let and gone through that process. What were some of your experiences? Let us know. Witness, it's good to have you here.
Thank you, Pavi. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so when you have these conversations around at the braai or whatever, people say, yeah, just buy a property and rent it out. It'll pay for itself. Is it that simple?
Yes and no.
Okay.
And the reason I say, I'll start with the no. The reason why a lot of people get bent is because of these price stand conversations that they have. Before you get into any form of investment, you must understand how serious investing is. Buying a property is literally you taking your hard-earned money, be it you buying it cash or you're going to be paying every month, and putting it in an asset. And without determining whether or not that asset is going to be making some form of cash flow for you or later give you some capital gains, then it's going to be a useless investment. And then, yes, because there are opportunities in the property market that people can take advantage of. When we think of buy-to-let, we're not necessarily only thinking about buying a flat or a house or an apartment and putting it on the market. There are different kinds of properties that one can diversify within the property industry and look at for them to be able to make money.
Very comprehensive yes and no. And I'd like to delve into that. Help us be a little bit more creative, because I think a lot of people just immediately think an apartment that you can let out.
Yeah.
I know student accommodation has become top of mind for a lot of people as well over the last few years. Yes. What else is out there?
Well, there are a lot of properties that are available. If you look at some of the areas where we are buying apartments now, some of the apartments are going for like $1 million plus, almost 2 million. And when you look at the rentals that one would be receiving from those apartments is less than what one is paying for the bond and all the extra costs. However, for that same amount of money, there's a building in Terrefontaine that can give you like 5-6 tenants and you'll have much more cash flow than having bought an apartment for the same exact amount of money, right? So it all goes back to how one looks at it. However, there are people who might be listening that say, but I've already bought the apartment and I've got a tenant living there. Give him a notice and find ways to put that apartment on Airbnb for you to start making money every single day rather than at the end of the month. And that obviously will require you to have some sort of hospitality skills, right? So with every property that one invests in, they have to understand that it is a business and they have to look at it as a business. Unless one is buying that property to use it as some form of retirement 20 years from now, because that's slightly different. When they are receiving that rental income on a monthly basis, they'll just be paying the bond, which sometimes they will have to top up.
Yes.
And that we're talking about people now that are not sophisticated investors. It's people that are saying, I just want to buy a property and then I want to either sell it after 20 years or I want to refinance or I want to take some money from that property and take my child to school. That's slightly different. But if you want to come in with the mindset of being an investor has to have cash flow. And you can't just buy for the sake of buying. The passive income has to be there, and it's there because you've bought a property and you're getting an income that's higher than the costs on that particular property.
Okay, so if you have a property and you're topping it up and you've thought about it, and now you're mentioning this Turfentine building that you can have however many tenants, or maybe the idea of an Airbnb, I mean, what are some of the things to think about? Should you just try and sell in this economy? Should you transition? Should you have a plan about transitioning from one to another?
I think the most important thing right now is that if you've already gotten a bond for a property, before you decide to sell, look at ways in which you could start monetizing that property already. Because you might sell now, and maybe you might not be able to afford the same property next year when you want to buy, right? Because interest rates are going up. Maybe when you bought the property, you could afford to get a bond. And now when you decide to sell, you find that you are no longer able to afford the same property that you had bought when you bought that one. So it's first important to look at what are the things that you can do to start making money from your existing portfolio. And once you've exhausted all avenues, then you could look at selling the property, but selling it only if you've eyed another one for the exact same amount of the bond that you could be able to afford immediately.
Because once that cash comes into your life, what have you seen happen?
So, I mean, you know how it is. If you're going to sell a property right now and you don't have a plan, the money will automatically bring in all sorts of plans that have got nothing to do with you building a portfolio.
Yeah.
You know, if money doesn't have a forced plan, it creates a plan of its own. And sometimes that plan could be consumption. Right. So, and one thing is that one always ought to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
If you're going to be investing in property, why are you doing it? Right. And that why is going to be the reason why you build and scale your portfolio. Because if it's not strong enough, then you're not going to pay attention to the portfolio. You're not going to look at what kind of tenants you bring into that apartment or building. Right. So one has to definitely look at it as a business, because it is a business on its own.
Just let's talk a little bit about Airbnb.
Yeah.
Pros, cons, and things to think about.
So some of the things you have to look at on Airbnb is that you could be thinking, I'm going to place the apartment for like 1,000 a day, only to find that that price point might be slightly expensive for your guests. And reducing that price point could also mean now you're not covering your bond and other costs. So it's very important to be price sensitive and price it in such a way that you're able to attract the right kind of market, but also making sure that your apartment is well furnished, like it's nice. You get an interior designer if you're not good at designing spaces for them to design that space for you, then that will justify the price that you are actually charging. And then also looking at the area where your apartment is. You see, if you haven't bought yet, you should shy away from buying apartments, if you're investing, of course, in areas that have got a lot of apartments. Like one goes into an estate or a complex that has got 1,000 apartments. Obviously, that means you have 1,000 people to compete with.
Right.
When it comes to that, you'll be competing for tenants, competing for Airbnb guests with over almost 1,000 people. But if you look at estates or complexes that have got 25 units, 50 units, less than 100 units, then you don't have a lot of people that you're competing with for tenants. And that gives you some sort of a demand, because, I mean, you have to look at supply and demand. So the fact that there are less units available on the market, then it means you'll have slightly more people gunning for the units that are available.
This is assuming that most people in that complex have their homes up.
Yes, assuming that most people in the complex are living there as their primary homes.
Right.
And it's only a few people that are putting these apartments on
Very
Airbnb.
interesting. I also, have seen body corporates who don't allow for their units in their estates to be put up as Airbnbs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are body corporates that say that they don't allow, but I can tell you now, people do it anyway. I've sat on several boards of trustees in estates. People will put, like, for instance, you said that right now it's a tight market, right? The economy is not doing so well. So a lot of people are not doing well. What are you going to do? Are you going to force someone not to use their asset to make money.
To pay the levies. Right.
And to pay all the costs associated with the property. What are you going to do? There's essentially no law that prohibits someone from renting out their apartment on short stay. It's my apartment. I can have as many visitors as I want.
So how do you handle the pushback from the body corporate?
Well, it's a conversation that one has to have, which reminds me of the Blythe situation.
Sure.
Remember when people had bought apartments, they were utilizing them for Airbnb. Baldwin didn't win that case.
So Baldwin then came up and said, we don't permit this, we don't like it. Was it loud, rowdy parties on weekends?
Weekends. Yes, that obviously is wrong. But if I'm buying into a new development and the developer is going to be owning some of the units, it has to be declared up front when I buy that apartment that this is not allowed, this is allowed. So a lot of people, when they bought there, they bought under the presumption or assumption that they would be able to use those apartments for Airbnb. So there are certain loopholes that one can challenge even in conversating with body corporates. You must remember one thing. Body corporates are people. It's not just a system somewhere. It's someone that you can sit down with and have a conversation with and even have a heart-to-heart and say, listen, I can't afford. I won't be able to pay the levies. If I don't do this and make some extra cash, and sometimes you don't necessarily have to be renting out the same apartment. Now with Airbnb, it allows you even to rent out a space as small as a spare bedroom. So you can be able to start making money while living in an apartment. So the fact that there are people coming in and out, you live there. No one is going to ask you, Pabi, why do you have so many visitors? It's none of anyone's business. So people have to look at those kind of loopholes in order for them to help themselves, protect their assets, and also grow what they have.
That's very, very interesting. You're going to stick around with us after the news.
Yes.
I mean, we're just sharing off air our passion for personal finance and for extending and educating the ideas around personal finance and really looking after yourself when it comes to your money. Property investor Witness Mdaka in studio with us. And I asked you the question, why is this a passion point of yours?
Yeah. So, and I said to you that firstly, I think I'm a Pan-Africanist at heart, and I want to see people who were previously disadvantaged and didn't have access to education, getting certain education that can help them prosper.
Yeah.
And also representation. You know, that book is written in a language that anyone can understand. I mean, there's a lady who wrote to me in 2021. She had read the book.
Yes.
She said to me she's a cleaner at the municipality. She's earning 8,000 rands and she didn't know that she could buy property. So she bought a property, put tenants there, didn't move into the property, continued to stay with her parents at home. And then she writes to me again after a year and says, Witness, I've saved over 60,000 rands. I want you to know that I'm going to buy another property. So stories like that show us that there are people that can literally afford to invest, but the fact that they don't see their earnings as money that's enough for them to invest, they don't. And what we don't understand is that our salaries and our incomes, they're a seed. What's that seed for? The seed is for us to take and plant into investments that are going to give us cash flow and passive income later. And life is not designed in such a way that we're going to work forever. At some point, we'll stop working. What needs to be carrying us is the stuff that we've invested in. So investing in knowledge that young people can grasp, and even older people can grasp, people that never had that kind of information can grasp, it becomes a passion of mine. My grandmother was a street sweeper, but she was earning over 15,000 rands from her shebeen in Alexander.
Wow,
right? As a street sweeper, she earned less than 1.5. But as a shebeen queen, she earned over 15,000 rands a month. But at the end of her career, someone defrauded her of 500,000 rands because of lack of education. My grandmother can read, my grandmother can write. And she thought to herself, I want to invest so my kids can have money in the future. But she didn't know that there are certain things you don't invest in, right? And she didn't even involve any of her kids, not alone me. I was too young in any case, right? But when I look back and look at that, I realized that there's so much that needs to be done when it comes to education around building a business, because that's the cornerstone of wealth creation. It's either you work on a business, you earn a salary, or you run a business, you earn dividends. And with what you earn, you either invest in other people's businesses that would be shares, or projects that you invest in that other people are doing, or you are investing in a property investment portfolio. Those have always been the cornerstones of wealth creation for centuries, from the time of Jesus. It says, the Bible says Jesus was born in a manger, right? But it says the inn where he was supposed to be born was full. That's why he was born in a stable.
Someone was making
money
His
when the
Airbnb
Messiah was being
full.
born. So Airbnb existed then, because that's exactly what the Bible says. It says the inn where he was supposed to be born was full. So I look at that and I read it. I'm like, this chap was making money while the Messiah is being born. And all of that is still happening today. There are formulas. Why would we want to change something that's already established and it's there and it's proven and we can use? And one of the reasons I wrote the book was because a lot of people were messaging me during 2020 saying, Witness, what can I do? Because I was writing a lot of posts, sharing ideas around how people can survive lockdown and all of that. And I realized some of these questions need to be literally answered in book format, because there isn't that one answer that's going to save anybody. There has to be a series of answers and information that allows people to then develop themselves and grow. But I also wrote the book for my daughter that I thought, should I catch COVID? I wrote that book in 2 months.
Really?
Yeah, because I thought to myself, should I catch COVID and die? My young daughter needs to know what her father's perspective is. She need not hear it from somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I wrote that book.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always ask that question because, this kind of passion doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from seeing your grandmother, and it comes from having an understanding that it can be done. And then the desire to make sure that everybody, it's like once your eyes get opened, you're like,
you want to show everyone.
Hey, have you seen this? Do you know this? And so, yes, the book is called It's More Than Just Money. Witness Mdaka, a guide to escaping the rat race and building generational wealth. And you'll let us know in just a second where we can get it. But let's finish up our conversation about property to let.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, okay, you've decided then you would like to get tenants for your property. You've got an investment property, whether it's the several tenants in one building or just the one apartment. Then should you get somebody to help you manage that property?
Yes. In the beginning, also, no. And this is the reason why I say this. In the beginning, you need to get your hands dirty.
Okay.
And understand exactly what is happening in your business, so that percentage that you pay to a property manager, you know exactly why you are paying it. Because I've seen the minute you say to people, get a property manager to manage it on your behalf and let him charge you a 10% fee, they think that's too much money to give to somebody else. But once you get your hands dirty and understand why, how much time that saves you, how much trouble that saves you, that certain tenants will be better suited if they are chosen by a property manager that's experienced, that's been around, that understands the market. That saves you a lot of time, and that saves you a lot of hassles. But at the same time, it's also important for you to do it yourself so that you understand what's going on in your business. Because remember, we said it's a business. If you don't get involved and run it, the minute you don't have a property manager to do it for you, you won't be able to scale and grow your business. And being within the business teaches you to also understand different aspects and different pain points that you need to be correcting, right? I've seen, especially people that are affluent, what they do is they buy handover. 20 years later or 5 years later even, the person realizes, but I'm overpaying in this portfolio. It's not even making me any money.
Yeah.
It's not making you money because you're not focused on it. Whatever you give yourself to will give itself back to you.
So this is your business. This isn't passive income.
What? My
No, if you purchase
a
property.
Yeah. So it's a business.
Because I'm asking that specifically because I think a lot of people think that you'll just purchase it, put someone in there, as you say, buy handover, ka-ching.
Passive income is not passive. You know, the biggest lie that is told in society is that there's something called passive income. Yes, it's there. But you actively have to look after that passive income. And how do you look after it? It's like when you have a cow, right? You just buy a cow and just go collect milk only, or you look after the cow, you help it graze, you buy certain nutrients for it to be, well taken care of, for it to be able to deliver the milk that you're looking for. That milk is the passive income, but the taking care of the cow is your part and your job. Same thing. The property produces the milk. It's your cash cow, if we can put it that way. But it needs to be taken care of. It needs to be looked after. It needs to be maintained. It needs to be renovated. All of those things have to go into mind. And you obviously have to pay taxes, pay the municipality, and pay all sorts of costs that are associated with owning property. But when you are focused on it, you are able to see where you can improve and how you can get it better with each property that you buy. Unlike just buying and handing it over.
Sure.
Buying something and handing it over does not teach you anything. It's just a buying process.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people in South Africa own property. If you go to the township, majority of the people there own the properties. Are they wealthy? Of course not. Why are they not wealthy? Their mindset around running those properties is not the same as one would have if one is an investor and is focused on growing that portfolio.
Very, very interesting. Amahle on Twitter says, is it wise to sell your house that you've just had for under a year of purchase, given the affordability issue caused by endless interest rate hikes?
Yeah, selling property is part of property business.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like closing a business is part of business. When you've bought something and it's not doing well and you can sell it to get something else that does well, then you have to do it.
Right.
But selling for the sake of selling, I don't know, right? It depends on one's financial position and situations. There are many ways in which one can literally, for instance, we run a company, one of our companies, we rent property from people who cannot afford their bonds anymore. So we rent your property, we put it on Airbnb, we operate it, we pay your bond for you. Because we know that we've got the skills and what's required.
Where do those people live?
Where do they live?
Yeah.
They rent it out and move to a cheaper apartment.
Oh, okay.
So you are in an apartment, you are paying 10,000. There's an apartment where you can pay 5. You move there and go pay 5 and rent out that one. That's continuing to pay itself while you are recovering financially.
Yes.
Because that's what the purpose of this whole thing is.
Yeah.
Some of these things are temporary and people like to make permanent decisions in temporary situations.
Yeah.
Selling is permanent.
Yeah.
Right? But overcoming a storm is something that's temporary. Sometimes a storm financially comes and it's temporary and you can just move, rent it out and rent a cheaper apartment. If you're paying 10, you go to a one that you pay 5 and let somebody else take over that bond and pay it for on your behalf.
I hope
that property continues to be yours.
Yeah. I hope that gives you some insights, Amahle. Adam is our last question here. How does one go about renting out your house? I suppose that's renting out your own house.
Their own house.
There are
different platforms where one could actually start. You can enlist the services of an agent because those people are using different platforms to rent out their properties, from Property 24, Private Property, which is my favorite. Some of my friends are at Private Property. So that's one of the platforms that are popular in the country that one can use. And then there are other platforms online. Facebook Marketplace is one of the places where you can find tenants. Literally being actively advertising that property. But like I say, the easiest is to just get an agent to find the right person for you. They will screen that person and make sure the person can even afford the property. And then once they've put the tenant in, you pay them 1 month's rental. You continue managing your property. If the tenant moves out, you go back to the same process. But meanwhile, you're also learning how you can do that.
Those are the steps that are simple steps.
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Of course it's not easy.
Even
I'm speaking from a position of privilege.
Okay. Good for you. But just to kind of, think about expectations, because I think the expectation is it's just going to be 1, 2, 3, it's done. But it can be very trying to find good people, to find the right tenants, and to be able to put that together. This is a conversation we need to carry on.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, as we wrap up, Witness Mdaga, where can we find It's More Than Just Money?
Okay. The first place you can find it is online, www.witnessmdaga.com. There you'll also find information about some of the events we are doing across the country in all 9 provinces, where we're just meeting with people, conscientizing them with entrepreneurship, helping them invest in property, and also engaging them with the knowledge that we have. Not only me, but different people that are in different industries just coming in to share knowledge specifically with people of color. And then they can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. I'm there. I'm ready to share. And then they can also WhatsApp our office on 062766 5612 or call us on 010 023 6001.
Fantastic. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing.
What a pleasure. There we go, wrapping things up, a conversation about should you buy to let.